Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. The United States has announced that it's considering a complete pullout from Afghanistan after 2014. That, according to some Afghan politicians, will lead to civil war and the return of the Taliban. But don't overestimate the Taliban, my guest today says. Jean Damécourt was France's ambassador to Afghanistan from 2008 till 2011, and he's just published the book A Diplomat at War in Kabul with Robert Laffont Press. Warm welcome to you to the interview, Jean Damécourt.
Hello.
Let's start with these fears about a Taliban takeover. Are they exaggerated?
I think they are largely exaggerated. You know, the weight, the very weight of the Taliban is not enormous. We speak of about 25,000 to 35,000 people, with a budget of 300 million, mostly supported by corruption for 1/3, by the drug traffic, mostly the poppy and opium, and 1/3 coming from financial support from some Islamic foundation in the Gulf, mostly.
So 25,000, you're talking about what, fighters there, and
fighters,
which is not enough to control much territory.
No, but it's not the only reason. I think if you look at the situation there, there are 4 scenarios which are likely. The first one is the continuation of the present situation after 2014, with the government controlling and the government forces controlling 85% of the population, but the rest of the country being not always, but partially controlled by the insurrection. That is not unlikely, but it's not going to last forever. This is an unstable scenario. The second one is a complete collapse of the Kabul government, and something a bit like what happened in Vietnam when the Americans pulled out. The Taliban take over the country and they control the country. I do not believe this is likely. I can't believe that it is likely. And there is an experience actually in the past in Afghanistan, which is that when the Soviets pulled out, actually they left behind a communist government which was largely supported militarily and economically, as the West will do with, well, the world actually will do when they pull out in 2014. And it lasted for 4 years until really the Soviet government was so bankrupt that they had to cut the support. So that is not impossible. The third scenario is a division of the country. The north being controlled by the Northern Front, which is mostly the Tajiks, the Hazara, the Uzbek, the Turkmen, and the south being controlled by the Pashtun and, in fact, the Taliban. And a war between these two parts of the country. I think this is not impossible, but again, it is not a stable scenario. The division of the country in 2 parts, I do not believe it's likely.
You're heading more for the first scenario, which is basically status quo of 25% of the country being effectively controlled by the insurrection?
Something like that. You know, recently the Afghan government and the Council for Peace have offered to the Taliban, who have declined for the time being, to negotiate. And they said, we will negotiate in 2013 and 2014, and we will give you, in effect, a control of a part of the country, because we will appoint some Taliban as governor or mayor of big cities. And in return, you have to accept the constitution. And they've done that recently in Chantilly. There were 2 delegates of the Taliban in Chantilly, a seminar organized by through the French government, not directly, but by a foundation. And they said, we would accept the constitution provided there is a change in the weight of the Sharia, the Islamic law.
But it's very hard to imagine these things being applied in the countryside and the villages. I mean, once again, we've seen recently videos of a public execution, and surely in the West, public opinion will say, why are we accepting effectively the return, even if it's not in all of Afghanistan, of people who cut off hands, people who don't allow women to be educated, people who destroy ancient cultural monuments? Was 10, 12, 13 years of war, millions, billions of dollars spent on the war, so many lives of soldiers sacrificed, all for this?
You're absolutely right. This will be part of the negotiation. It's a very important part of the negotiation. Of course, the Taliban have to accept the constitution, but also they have to accept a number of guarantees given by the constitution. They also have to give up their arms and the fighting. So all that is not yet taking place, but in reality there is no end to a crisis like that without a negotiation.
But what Taliban are we talking about? I mean, you write about meeting, as it were, reformed Taliban in Kabul, but it would have been too dangerous for you to meet hardline Taliban. What is really known about them? I mean, some people have suggested that they're not quite the same Taliban as they were in 2001, but obviously others will be very skeptical that they've really changed.
I think they are, first of all, we're talking of three main movements. The first one is the Hezb Islami Hekmatyar, which is an independent movement which exists and we should take into consideration. So it will be part of the negotiation. Then there is the Haqqani group, which has been in the past extremely murderous and has been very closely linked to Al-Qaeda. This one can't be accepted in the negotiation. It will have to be, completely eliminated. They are the hard part of the insurrection. And the last one is the Taliban. It's the most important one. It's the one really governing most of the insurrection. They are pretty well organized as a network. They are the one we are talking about, and they have changed. There are some signs of change. The fact that they accept, for example, even if it is the beginning, the constitution, or they are ready to accept the constitution, is a sign of change. I think one of the reasons is that they just are very, very tired of fighting. They've been fighting for such a long time. A number of them have been killed. And at the end, there's a time when you want to go back home and maybe put your arm at rest.
Aren't you worried, though, that this is just a playing for time tactic? They might say that they accept the Constitution, but now that Barack Obama has said we might pull all our troops out just after the end of 2014, the Taliban can say, okay, well, we'll accept the Constitution. When the foreign troops completely leave, they'll just create havoc or do whatever they want.
You may be right. One of the difficulty of any negotiation like that is that, of course, each party is trying to get as much as possible, and the Taliban will. And there will be a lot of violence during this negotiation. They will try to get as much as possible and to be in a position of force. Yeah.
What do you think, we're running out of time, Jean, but what does the legitimization of the Taliban mean for Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, sorry?
I think, Al-Qaeda has been pretty much eliminated. It's not anymore the force it used to be, and it's the elimination by the American forces in Abbottabad of Osama bin Laden has really put a serious end to their activity. So it doesn't mean that there are no more international fighters in Afghanistan or in Pakistan, but they are not as important as they used to be.
So you don't see that alliance that was so critical in 2001 to be a real factor nowadays in this negotiation between the Taliban and the Afghan government in the future?
I think it has to be a very important point in the negotiation. The Taliban will have to accept no alliance with the international jihadists. Absolutely, this is not negotiable, it's a precondition.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's obviously going to be give and take, these negotiations. If the Taliban say that they accept the Constitution, what will be exchanged essentially between Kabul and the Taliban? I mean, what does each side get? Obviously, Kabul gets perhaps some kind of peace, but what would be offered to the Taliban?
Well, you said it. You know, Kabul gets and Afghanistan gets peace. That's really what everyone is looking for. It's the first request of the Afghan people. That's what they are expecting. They want peace. They want peace for their family and for themselves. But the second part is that the Taliban will have peace as well. They will be in a position to come back to their part of the country. Most of them come, not all of them, but from the south, the Pashtun south. It's 12 million Pashtuns.
But do you see any way to hold them to account? Say they don't implement the constitution, certain aspects of Sharia law or treatment of women. Would there be any penalties? Because it's hard to see how Kabul could impose such things.
I think it will be part of the negotiation. You can't leave, you know, the Taliban rule a province or a city without putting some condition. And of course, one of them will be to have an alliance, or the parties part of this government, local government.
Okay, on that relatively optimistic note, we'll have to end it. Thank you so much.
I'm a pessimist. But
oh, well, you sounded optimistic in general.
I want to believe that there are solutions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Jean Demécourt, author of Diplomat at War in Kabul and the former French ambassador to Afghanistan between 2008 and 2011, joining me here. Do check out upcoming interviews. You can look at my Twitter handle @ArmandGeorgian. Do stay tuned to France 24.